Our News on Terror segment tonight, a shocking new report reveals that major American foundations have given millions of dollars to Islamic organizations accused of having ties to terror organizations. Foundations like George Soros' Open Society Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have given millions of dollars to groups like Islamic Relief Worldwide, a group which some countries have banned for allegedly supporting Hamas. So was this just ignorance on the part of the American foundations, or is there something more sinister at play here? With me now, Director of the Middle East Forum, Greg Roman. Greg, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Greg, this was great work by you and your team at Middle East Forum here. You found that there are several, actually a handful of major American charitable foundations or organizations that gave money to Islamic charitable foundations that have ties to terror funding. How did you find this?
So I wouldn't even just call it Islamic, it's Islamist. These are individuals and organizations and groups that are pushing a very, very strict form of political Islam that they hope to impose upon other Americans and use that funding to go beyond American shores and influence policy in other American allies countries. We started off with an investigation 3 years ago from our Center for Islamist Financing, which essentially looks at the ways in which Islamist groups raise money and then how their boards of directors distribute money, both to individuals who are under their care or under their influence, and also to American politicians that they give campaign contributions to. We dug through tax records, went through local, state, and federal filings, and over a 5-year period found more than $6 million that had been distributed by more than 65 American community, corporate, individual, and donor-advised funds.
Right. This is absolutely incredible work. Absolutely incredible. So I want to start, just so our viewers are very clear on what we're working with here. Talk to me about some of these Islamist organizations or these Islamic charitable organizations that have ties to Islamist terror funding, because I've heard of several of these. We've covered several of these on the show before. Some of them have actually been unindicted co-conspirators in terror funding lawsuits here in the United States several years back. But who are the rest of them?
Right, so we're talking about 8 to 9 groups. I'll give you the top 3, I'd say, the top 3 most egregious. The first starts with the Council on American Islamic Relations, also known as CARE, an organization set up as a Hamas affiliate in the mid-90s that was essentially part of the 2007 Holy Land trial, which is you're talking about a terrorism financing trial down in Dallas, Texas, which listed CARE as an unindicted co-conspirator due to its connections with Palestinian terrorist organizations. There's been 5 to 6 members of CARE's staff that are now currently in U.S. jail for different terrorism-related offenses. And we find that it's not just their illegal activities that are the most worrying, but their use of democracy and democratic means to try to influence U.S. policy, to separate it from being able to arbitrarily and also judiciously not just prosecute terror cases, but encouraging local Muslim communities that are not radical, that are actually mainstream, from not cooperating with the FBI, with federal law enforcement, and even with local law enforcement. So you have their San Diego chapter trying to inculcate students in the San Diego school district with what they call an Islamophobia curriculum. What it is it's just shilling for the activities of Islamists who are trying to influence American youth with their narrative, as approaching it from an open public school, they're trying to bring a private religious program into American schools. If we look at another organization like the Islamic Society of North America, we see that their supporters are even going so far as to try to defend the actions of a terrorist organization like Hezbollah during a war with Israel or even during their normal conventions that they have. And when we go to some of the other organizations like the Islamic Circle of North America, like the Muslim Action Society, and even the Conference of American Muslim Organizations, we see that they regularly host speakers at their annual and at their events in D.C. and across other cities across the United States, where they're hosting homophobic, anti-Semitic, anti-women speakers that go so far to promote issues like female genital mutilation, the idea that women are second-class citizens, and even going so far that they try to support regimes that openly advocate killing and maiming Americans and their allies. So this is who we're dealing with, and these are the recipients of this funding from what was once thought of as mainstream American foundations.
Right. It's absolutely incredible what you just laid out. I mean, these organizations have clear ties to terrorism or to a radical form of Islam that advocates for a version of Sharia law that oppresses people and can even mutilate and kill people if you do not adhere to that version of that law. So that's established. We have those groups. Now let's pivot over to the American charitable organizations. And like I said in the introduction to this segment, these are charitable organizations that we've all heard of. This is George Soros Open Society Foundation. This is the GE Foundation. This is the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. This is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They have given not just a small amount of money to these various groups, they've given quite a chunk of change to these radical groups.
Right, and I mean, with $1, these individuals don't just gain a pecuniary advantage, they also gain legitimacy by having a relationship with these mainstream organizations. I think the most egregious foundation that has refused to not even examine these contributions, but have gone so far to condemn my organization and the moderate Muslim allies that we're working with to try to shut down American Islamist organizations would be the Silicon Valley Foundation and Silicon Valley Community Foundation and its CEO, Emmett Carson. This is a charitable body that has received $1 billion from Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan from Facebook fame, $500 million from WhatsApp, and is the go-to address for corporate social responsibility for all of Silicon Valley's tycoons. I find it egregiously hypocritical that this foundation that represents Silicon Valley's wealthiest elite, on one hand claims to be taking care of those who are the less advantageous in Silicon Valley, and on the other hand are catering by giving monies to these radical organizations. Think about it. You have the wealthy who run these social media companies who are trying to allegedly clean up their dissemination of social media outlets for ISIS and other terror organizations and are in fact enacting censorship. And on the other hand, while they're saying they're defending Americans from terrorism, they're promoting individuals who shill for terrorists by giving them charitable contributions. This is a ridiculous amount of hypocrisy, and I think that right now they have to be called to account. The response when we wrote to them letters year after year, it's not as if though we went public with this information right when we found out about it. We tried to have a dialogue. They ignored us, then they shamed us, then they tried to bring this into a legal fight by going so far to hire a legal team to try to get our report censored and taken off the internet.
Right, and the interesting part, I want to cut in just for a second to let our viewers know that the Middle East Forum, before they exposed this publicly, your organization tried to convince each one of these groups to stop funding these Islamist organizations. It wasn't like you did this just to get the scoop. You were trying to do the right thing. I also want to expose exactly how much money this is. So these American organizations collectively gave over $5.6 million to these 7 or 8 Islamist groups since 2008, within the last 9 years. George Soros Open Society Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave over $2 million in donations to at least one of these groups since 2011. The Open Society Foundation gave $625,000 to the Islamic Society of North America between 2011 and 2015. GE Foundation, we're almost out of time here. I just want to make this final point. GE Foundation gave more to groups on the list than any other corporate foundation, more than $537,000. Yet they are the only one of these organizations that said that they will no longer be giving money to Islamic Relief worldwide after this has been exposed, although they are continuing to give to the U.S. branch of that. Greg?